Hello everyone and welcome to Château de Fayolle. I'm delighted to welcome you and to introduce you to this chateau, a jewel of the Dordogne region. My wife Florence and I have owned this incredible chateau for 6 months now, which in recent years has been a bit, not abandoned, but in any case there have been many intrusions. A lot of objects have disappeared, some of the furniture, so there's been a slow deterioration over the last few years, and the project now is to preserve and safeguard it, and to carry out the necessary restorations to preserve this heritage. And now, without further ado, I invite you to follow me to discover the interior of the chateau, which boasts some exceptional features. You'll see a theater, the grand salon, and the grand dining room. Look at this great hall, which is truly exceptional. Now you'll see some areas that are still in their original state, but which my wife and I have cleaned up. And other spaces that are really more than just in their original state, that are in a state of neglect. It's a bit like the dark side of Château de Fayolle. But you're about to discover something extraordinary, the very soul of the chateau. Do you want to follow me? Let's go. Let's start with the servants' quarters. This was the second floor. In the chateau's heyday, in the 18th and early 19th centuries, we had around 30 servants serving the marquis and the marquise. You should also know that the chateau was built in 1766 by the third Marquis de Fayolle, Nicolas de Fayolle. The first Marquis, Nicholas I, was awarded the Marquis' crown by Louis XV, who erected the estate in 1724. We're on the servants' floor. Imagine 35 servants. You can imagine the life here. Each of them had a job to do, you see. So it's true that in recent years, it's been rather... In fact, in recent decades, it's been used as a storage room. You see, there's a whole bunch of elements, objects, accessories that remain here. And among all that, we see remnants of life before, life in the 18th, life in the 19th. You see here, we're going to go into a first bedroom, which we assume was a governess's room. Since there are elements that you can't find in the other rooms, notably the canopy bed, the fireplace, a painting, or the fabric on the wall, so obviously it's in a state that's upside down. But the best thing about it is to see and imagine the life that was there, maybe 100 years ago, but it seems like yesterday. Behind, you can even see bits of fabric that were certainly lace, that were their personal effects, which is there, which remains there. So far, we haven't touched anything. We've left everything as it was, and it's really a question of not touching anything. To put a bell on this castle which is so strongly alive today. Now we're moving on to different rooms. Different rooms that are obviously in very poor condition, but everything structural in particular is in good condition. We have all the reports, all the expert reports, but it's true that it's quite impressive because over time, all the plaster, so there were leaks a long time ago, which have been dried out. All the plaster fell to the ground. It's true that it's impressive, but it's just aesthetic, really. Speaking of floors, you can see Tomette. It's quite amazing to see this on an upper floor because it's so heavy. And in fact, what I was taught, because it surprised me the first time, is that the Tomette, this floor, was used as a fire break in case of fire. Same here, let's take a quick look. There's a succession of rooms. There's a lot of storage space now, but the colors are pretty crazy, pretty incredible. You feel like you're in an escape game with all this furniture left over. This life that was here not so long ago. Look at the quality of the woodwork too. We're not on the same level as the frames, but we're just below them. And it's true that we were lucky enough to have a building which was in a very healthy state as far as the wood and the roof were concerned. There's absolutely nothing to touch on the framework, and so it allowed us to project ourselves into this project. So I'll take you to some other bedrooms. Even if they're not bedrooms anymore. Here, for example, is this was the photo lab of the last Marquis who developed his photos here. Here, with a dark room. A fruit dryer. And here, a space that certainly served as a secondary office, with some of the Marquis' more personal effects. Archives, administrative archives, some accounting documents. I think it was a bit of a fallback. Now I'm going to take you to a room that's quite... Personally, I like it a lot because it's what we used to call the store or the storeroom, where a whole lot of accessories were changed, exchanged, changed according to the guests. So in case of breakage or to match the taste of the guests, we'd pick up the accessories and replace them here. Here you can see what's left. So it's true that for the moment we haven't yet looked at the contents, we haven't explored all that. We need to do it with a clear head, we need to do it in a structured way. And we've got these wallpapers that were supposed to be copies. It's an incredible treasure trove for us. It doesn't have financial value in the true sense of the word, but it does have historical value, because it's the wallpaper that was, at one time or another, on the walls of Fayolle. So now we've pretty much covered the servants' floor. So there's a whole bunch of rooms. We're not going to do them all. But you see, by the way, all the doors have cat flaps. How funny. We can really imagine how the life was on this floor. We'll go down the back staircase. This is as it was, but a beautiful wooden staircase. We'll visit a final area dedicated to servants, to the household staff, the place where the linen was stored. This is it. And why have I brought you here? Well, it's been searched, but you can still see the vestiges of the past, and I find it extraordinary to see these rags that were folded, wrapped, tied with ribbon, the little label. And it's quite extraordinary to see that. You see, all the linen was even referenced. So here we still have the little notebook where the linen was annotated. We didn't touch anything, we left it open as it was. And once again, we have the labels in the drawers. These drawers have obviously been opened by visitors, by urbexes. But since we've been here, no one has touched the castle's contents. And our personal promise is not to touch it, or at least not to touch it in a way that, how to put it, strategically, without distorting something very, very dear to us, perhaps even dearer here, which is the soul of the chateau. And that's something we want to preserve at all costs. If we lose the soul of the chateau, we lose the treasure of the chateau. So here we come to the floor dedicated to the nobles and to the family, since it was a large house. Finally, it's a family castle. And we're off to an extraordinary room, the Empire Room. Extraordinary for its wallpaper. Since we had a report about a month and a half ago on the origin of this paper, which dates back to the end of the 18th century, and there are said to be 5 copies in the world. 2 in the USA, 1 in Germany, and 1 in France. So there are 9 rolls of this paper, and they were silk screened in 5 copies and hand painted here on the walls. So that's it. So it's really an exceptionally rare wallpaper. And the anecdote about this wallpaper too, which is on the walls of this Empire room, is that it was deposited at the beginning of the 20th century to be sent to a gallery, a museum in New York to be exhibited and put back on these walls. So that too, just for the history, it's something unique. And of course, beyond the rarity of this paper, we have the aesthetics of this room, which speaks for itself. There you have it. You can even see the trompe-l'œil doors, which are here, which are in the walls, and there are some on all 4 corners. Voila, with a vestibule, with a bedroom, a washing room. Well, a room here and a shower room. We pass here in front of the museum. Today it's true that there's not so much of a museum aspect to this room, but it was the family museum, with a whole host of paintings dedicated to the family characters, illustrious family members, but not only. There were also lots of porcelain and earthenware items, so it was a bit like all the family souvenirs. And here we reproduced a few paintings, for which we were able to recover the visuals. So here we have the first Marquis, Nicolas, who in 1724 obtained the Marquisat Nicolas de Fayolle. Then came the third Marquis, Nicolas II de Fayolle, who built the chateau in 1766. Various marquises, including Gérard de Fayolle, who was president of Château, Société historique et archéologique du Périgord, president and one of the founders, and the last Marquis, Alain de Fayolle, who died in 2012. And the last of the de Fayolle name, since he had an only daughter, Dominique, and no son. Dominique, to whom we took over, who gave us this chateau. And you can even see for the anecdote her wedding dress that she signed over to us. Let's continue on the family floor, with a second bedroom that which is the talk of the town, especially on social networks, is very visual and once again quite unique. In any case, Fayolle is generally unique. The chateau is unique, the family was quite unique. So here we have the blue room, with a rather busy decoration, but well worth the detour, with an 18th century Périgord parquet floor. And you can see that these 2 beds, you see there are rails there, so people often ask me why. I too used to wonder why there are rails here. But you see, it's to bring the beds closer together when you want to sleep 2 side by side. And what's so impressive about this castle is, the first time my wife and I came here, and it's the same every time, there's this very immersive dimension. Here we cleaned all the spaces that were full of cobwebs because the shutters were closed to prevent intrusion. But there were ashes in all the fireplaces. Many fireplaces still have ashes in them, and there are fireplaces everywhere, in every room, marble fireplaces. And really, you get the impression that everything has frozen, time has stopped, and that's something very, very strong about this chateau. The immersive dimension is something we really want to keep. The idea is not to make a museum, something museum-like, but we really, really want to There's something very strong that grips us, and we want to keep that. And all the visitors, all the people who come to this chateau have this impression, and it's really something unique. That's it, let's leave the upstairs and go to the ground floor. And see spaces that are obviously living spaces, but that here, for the moment, are still in their original state, but that we've been able to restore, to put it mildly, at least cleaned up. So here we go again, back through the great hall. And we'll go into the dining room. This is the dining room. This is it, with a stove that was made on site in earthenware and marble. A very large table that's adjustable, it's possible, so how many people can eat on it? It's made for 20 people, but you can go up to 26 without any problem, because you can extend it even further. So that's it. It's amazing to be able to have a full-length table and to be able to have big meals. In those days, you could imagine the great evenings at Fayolle. The great era being the end of 18th century, first part of 19th century, until the Restoration period. Voilà. But the whole Périgord region rushed to come, to take part in the big parties at Château de Fayolle. That's how it was, and it was a place of exchange, a place of culture, an artistic place. In any case, it was truly a symbol of Périgord. Well, now we're entering a place, in a room which is also the Fayolle treasure from the Château de Fayolle. So there are a lot of things, a lot of exceptional elements at Fayolle, but this one is quite special. There are very few rooms like this in Château. Some are in outbuildings. Here, it's right here, in situ. It's the theatre. That's what's so exceptional about it. Well, obviously the theatre is in a very good state of preservation. The curtain is missing. There's a pulley system behind the curtain, but beyond that you see the gilding is actually quite good and in pretty good condition. You can see that the whole ceiling has been painted in shades to represent the sky. And the great thing is that the de Fayolle family had the presence of mind to deposit these tapestries before leaving the premises, to protect it from any damage or possible theft. And so here we have an extraordinary piece with this tapestry depicting the Chevalier de Fayolle returning from the Crusades. Here we are, and here, obviously. It lets us imagine all kinds of events in this theatre, which dates from, it's a theatre that dates back to before the Restoration period, Consulate period to be exact. So between 1799 and 1804. And this theatre gives us access to another place. Exceptional room again. There are only exceptional places at Fayolle, only exceptional rooms. The library. There are many libraries in many chateaux, but here we have a very beautiful library with the smell, with an atmosphere, with a few holes in the shelves, but with elements and books that are still quite interesting. So this is a very nice room. And by the way, we haven't touched the contents yet, we've just touched some of the objects. We've just opened some cupboards, but we haven't explored. But among the items we've been able to discover, there was an illustrious member of the de Fayolle family. There have been many illustrious characters, notably among the Marquis, But there was the brother of a marquis at the beginning of the 20th century, who was also called Alain de Fayolle, who was a military man and who died in the war, at the start of the war. And just for the record, he died at the front. The story is that they put his white gloves on. He asked his troops to go into battle with him. He was killed. So he had on his Saint Cyrian costume and his white gloves. There you go. And then we found his notebook, his logbook, in which he wrote every day. So obviously it stops. It's very moving because it's one of the highlights of Fayolle's life, and it stops the day before he died. And when I mentioned the white gloves earlier, he really had his own outfit. And recently some friends helped us clean a room. And they found a box. And he said, "Come here, we've got this box. Are you interested?" We found it in some shelves. So when you read on it, it says, "Objet trouvé dans la cantine de mon fils Alain, mort au combat le 22 juin 1914. So I open it up and see the gloves of the Marquis, well, the brother of the Marquis. And these are some pretty powerful moments, moments that represent history, our history, the history of France. But they are moments, moments of emotion and moments of life. And that's what people who come here can discover. It's moments, moments of emotion, because this chateau is an emotion in itself. There are 100 rooms in Fayolle. We're going to discover one last room which is rather empty, but which is marvelous. It's my wife's favorite room, probably because it's pink. But it's a beautiful room. We call it the ballroom. It was a big living room, but there you go. I think people danced in this room. That's why we like to call it the ballroom, with its atmosphere. Very, very hushed, with great moldings, pink toning. And an exceptional fireplace. Again, I say exceptional a lot, but everything here is exceptional, with cast iron on every part of the fireplace. On the back, on sides, and on the front. There is Versailles parquet in very good condition too. We're basically working on a restoration project, but we're lucky in that we've got a structure, a shell, even the finish is in good condition. This chateau was, the original architect was Chauvin in 1766. And it was reshaped in any case. There was a restoration program at the end of the 19th century in 1895 by the architect Léon Drouin, who notably redid the north facade. We'll get to the stoop in a moment. He is the one who helped bring back some comfort to the living spaces, specifically the living spaces from the 19th century. And so there are here windows from the 19th century. That's what's so special about the chateau too. Whereas on the south facade, we're still in a very 18th century style, with little crosses, little windows, that's it. And now we're going to access the staircase that will take us to the gardens, the English-style gardens. Voila, so here we are with a breathtaking view. We're facing English-style gardens, which were created in the 19th century by the Bühler brothers, who were renowned landscape gardeners. In particular, they designed the Parc de la Tête d'Or. This is what we call the coulée verte, which has been shaped by hand to create this unique rounded shape. And opposite, the forests were in fact a succession of groves, grouped together because they weren't necessarily maintained. And there were walking paths, making all this an English-style garden. But we're really in a magical environment, and that's what we were looking for. To have an environment that could let us imagine all kinds of events. And welcome people to a place that's just crazy, and it is here. You see this 19th facade here, so on the north side, with the three coats of arms, with on the left the de Fayolle family lion, and on the right the wives of the first three marquis, and also above the letter F from de Fayolle, which is in the ironwork, which is on the mantelpieces themselves. And there you have it. We've seen the interior spaces. The household staff floor, some bedrooms, and the chateau's living spaces. And now, as a bonus, we're going to go into the basements and see places we're not used to seeing. Subject to many fantasies and mysteries. I'll take you there now. And we'll have a little surprise too. You know we're in Périgord, and Périgord, many places, castles, have underground passages. And here I'm going to take you there. Come on, let's get to the kitchen. So you need to know that this building was constructed, as is often the case with castles, on medieval foundations. The chateau was built in 1766, but before that there were even two castles. So the foundations are medieval, and we go into the kitchen, which was refurbished in the 19th century. By the way, it's not a classic fireplace. We checked with our architect. We found the old fireplace that you can see the marks of the old fireplace. Maybe we'll rehabilitate it as part of a program, so that these are the original chimneys. So what I'm going to do now is go into the closeau, which is the chateau's underground passage. The closeau, as you may know, are galleries dug into the limestone here. So this was a defensive closeau. In other words, in the event of an attack, it was quite often the case for castles, especially since we were on the edge of the English border. So we were under attack. Fayolle was regularly attacked by the English, and so the family came to the closeau to escape the attackers. So this closeau is also the entrance to an underground passage. Here we have only the entrance, not the exit. Because so often the legends, the stories, they say that the underground goes to the village church or chapel. Well, it probably wasn't the case, but in any case we have the entrance to the underground passage, and our architect and I believe that it went at least as far as the dry moat, since there was a dry moat in the medieval castle. So here we are on a closeau and underground passageways dating back to medieval times. Here was the entrance to the underground passageway, which was walled up and then demolished by explorers. As you can see, nature has reclaimed its rightful place. Then if we go a little deeper, if you go a little further into the closeau, there you can see the first chamber. Here it is. This was used as a chamber in case of attack. You can still see the remains of the candles which were probably used to light this room. And here are the loopholes in case of attack. If the attacker managed to get down into the closeau because there was an entrance to the castle, so if he found the entrance, he could go all the way down there, but there were loopholes to stop him. The remains of a door made of scrap metal, certainly period. And if you go a little further, hop. There we see the arrival for the attackers. At least it was Le Closeau's arrival. If the attacker got that far, he'd fall into a 3.5-meter high hole if ever the trap didn't close. There were loopholes to stop him, which are here. Here we go. We'll just skip ahead to the oven room. So there was both the oven and the wash house. The wash tub was heated with coal, of course. And the kneading trough, or what we call the may, too. A very, very large kneading trough. But let's not forget that there were over 30 people to support and feed here in the chateau. The servants alone. So that's a calendarer. It's someone who gave us a gift, and that's it. There are a lot of gifts from people who are, since we took over the chateau, who've asked us to exhibit some of their objects. And the calendreuse is used for, we put the linen inside in the middle of the two rollers to spin and iron it. Then we go down into the cellars. With plenty of coal, since the chateau's boiler room ran on coal. And there, several barrels. It's important to know that the chateau was a vineyard 150 years ago, until the vine disease, phylloxera, and so all that came to an end. But there are still vestiges of the wine-growing operations with numerous bottles and barrels. We have a rather gigantic cellar with this height under the vault, quite rare. And there's no humidity. It's a really healthy space. Because I sincerely believe that the chateau was very, very well designed. There are air vents everywhere. And so 250 years later, the structure is still very solid and very healthy. As you can see, these walls were built in the last century, not so long ago, but you can still see all the bottles in storage. So it seems that champagne flowed freely at the chateau. And good champagne. A few little bats? They're everywhere in the various uninhabited spaces, and that means the air is healthy. And back to the Great Hall. We didn't mention this, but this was the boiler flues, which supplied the various areas of the chateau with. You can see these grates, which were the heating grates, cast iron grates. One was taken away, stolen, unfortunately. There you go. But it's a bit, in fact, it dates from the same period as the Opéra Garnier in Paris. It's more or less the same heating system. There are heating systems all over the ground floor. So, we're coming to the end of this tour of the Château de Fayolle. Once again, we've only had the keys to this marvelous chateau for 6 months. We're really proud to be able to take up the torch to the de Fayolle family. You should know that this family had owned this land for 900 years. And today, with Florence, my wife, the project, the idea is to pass on the baton. We're only passing on the baton, but for the time we're here, we'll be able to restore it, to help restore this chateau. And to do this, we'll soon be rolling out a large-scale cultural program which will run from April to October here in Périgord at Tocan-Saint-Apré, with events and tours, of course, but also large-scale immersive shows such as the Marquise Ball, the Giant Egg Hunt, concerts, and of course theater. And we also have a special project that's very close to our hearts, because we really want the whole region, which knows the territory and the chateau very well, to take part in this project. It's about creating a great immersive show with volunteers, who will be actors for the duration of the show, for 2 weekends each summer. Because for us, this project should be the responsibility of an entire region. It's the history of France, it's the history of a territory, and the locals are very fond of it, fond of their heritage. So it has to be everyone's place here at Château de Fayolle.